Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
We're just about live.
Okay. And as soon as we're live, we'll do our oaths.
All right, we're good to go.
Okay, team members can turn on their cameras for one more moment, please. I'll have you all raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Shake your head if yes. Okay, we'll note that everyone's shaking yes. All right, all team members can turn off their cameras and go to witnesses while the witnesses turn on their cameras. Okay. Raising your right hands, witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? If you agree, shake your head yes. Okay, the record will reflect that everyone shook their head yes. You can turn off now. Finally, for our scoring panelists, if you can turn on your cameras and raise your right hands. And do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? And for the record, everyone nodded in the affirmative. Thank you very much. Okay, start off with introductions, please. If the plaintiffs can please introduce counsel and their witnesses.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Emma Senishin, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent the plaintiff in today's case. All of our witnesses and attorneys use she, her pronouns. If my co-counsel could go ahead and introduce themselves.
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Lydia Brisky, and today I will be presenting the opening statement on behalf of the plaintiff.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Saffron Bennett Spurlock, and today I will be delivering the closing arguments on behalf of the plaintiff.
Thank you.
And now if our witnesses could introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Perry, and I am Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Herlinger, and I am Carson Durst.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucille Walker, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you all. And we'll move on to the defense. If we could have introductions of counsel and witnesses.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Rachel Kidder, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. I will be giving the closing argument as well as conducting the direct examination of Blake Doncourt and the cross-examination of Carson Durst. May my co-counsel introduce themselves?
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Kenya David, and I will be giving the opening statement as well as conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Landon Stuckey, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers. May our client representative and witnesses introduce themselves?
Please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Peterson, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Emma Helgeson, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Esther Fan, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. Okay, before we proceed to opening statements, are there any preliminary matters for the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor, we have 3 housekeeping matters at this time.
Okay.
First, we request permission to reserve any time not used in our closing argument for rebuttal.
Granted.
Second, there are stipulated facts that have been agreed to before trial today. We request that these facts are constructively read into the record.
Okay.
And finally, we would just like to confirm the method we'll be using to enter exhibits during trial today. Team Pam intends to screen share the exhibit at the onset of the questioning of the witness. We would then proceed with the formalities of entering the exhibit. In this case, the jury would not constructively see the exhibit until Your Honor has formally admitted the exhibit into evidence. Would this be acceptable, Your Honor?
Yeah, you can show the exhibit. We'll presume that the jury can't see it so that you can lay a foundation and so we can follow along with your foundation. If it's admitted, then we can say that it's being published. If it's not admitted, then it will have to be taken down.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further housekeeping matters at this time.
Thank you. For the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. First, in accordance with the rules of mock trial, we request that in the event of any technical difficulty, the clock be stopped immediately and that time not count toward either side.
Yes.
Next, Your Honor, there are two witnesses with the last name of Weirs in this case, Dakota Weirs and Skylar Weirs. We request, when appropriate, to refer to them by first name only for clarity's sake.
Any objection by plaintiff?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed to opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready.
Okay. Opening statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and distinguished members of the jury. My name is Lydia Brisky, and I, alongside my co-counsel, represent the plaintiff of the following case, Miss Dakota Weirs. Evidence will show we are all here today because Lush Fertilizer prioritized profits over people. More specifically, my client, Miss Dakota Weirs. You see, members of the jury, all companies have a duty to protect their users and put safety and ethics above all else. But Lush Fertilizer failed to do so. Witness testimony will show that they prioritized their earnings over the safety of their consumers, and this decision had consequences. Today, we will call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, Dakota herself will testify and share how before Lush came into her life, she was an active member of the community, part of her school's National Honor Society, student body president, and a piano prodigy with a bright future ahead at Juilliard, where she was offered a full ride scholarship. She will tell you how her summers were spent working at Haven Landscaping and spreading Lush Fertilizer. Little did she know this product would ruin her life completely. Dakota will tell you how she began to feel sick all of the time, and after countless doctor and hospital visits and a colossal amount of medical bills, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She will tell you how her passions and dreams were stripped away and replaced with pain and severe bouts of depression the minute she was exposed to a chemical compound in Lush Fertilizer called Drufo. Next, Carson Durst, a former Lush employee, will testify and show you an email sent by Lush's Drufo product manager, which states that Lush's own labs identified Drufo as a potential carcinogen and how they chose to hide this fact that their product could cause cancer from their consumers, endangering the lives of each and every one of them. Finally, we will call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand, a previous research analyst for a multinational chemical company and qualified expert in both agriculture and chemistry, who will show you that Drufo is extremely carcinogenic. She will tell you after hearing the negative reports of this chemical, she took it into her own hands and conducted a study to investigate. She will then share the results of her study, that people exposed to Drufo are 10 times more likely to develop cancer, and identify a direct link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The defense will then try to delude you into thinking Lush is completely innocent and frantically point fingers at anyone else. They will present to you Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, who is a divorcee with financial complications with their ex-spouse, driven to prioritize profits over people. Skylar Weirs, an uncredible witness testifying against her own twin. And finally, they'll present to you Devin Williams, the head of researches and development at Lush, who will testify extensively as to the environmental benefits of Drufo, but will fail to mention anything about the actual safety of this chemical compound. Members of the jury, we as the plaintiff would like to remind you of the burden of proof we hold in today's case. The burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence each element of Lush's negligence. A preponderance of evidence is the lowest burden of proof in our judicial system, and we will meet this burden. You will quickly discover that 2 out of the 4 elements of negligence are not in dispute. That number 1, Lush manufactured a product with Drufo. You will hear many witnesses testify this from both sides. And number 3, that Dakota was reasonably expected to use this product as she was an employee at at Haven Landscaping. However, we will prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush had a duty to protect their users from harm and that they failed to meet this duty as they prioritized profits over people. This failure was the direct and proximate cause of my client damages, and thus they must be held liable. And Dakota Weirs must be awarded the maximum amount of non-economic damages proven at trial today and awarded by law. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening statement for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Ruinous condition. Wrong conclusion. Plaintiff's counsel told you a heart-wrenching story. It's always tragic when someone is diagnosed with cancer. But Dakota Weir's ruinous condition has led her lawyers to the wrong conclusion that Lush Fertilizer is to blame. On the contrary, the evidence in this case will not show that Lush Fertilizer caused Ms. Weir's cancer. Good afternoon, members of the jury. My name is Kenya David, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent Lush Fertilizer Incorporated, a company that has been dragged into this court not by Dakota Weirs, but by people with an agenda to monetize the public's fear of cancer by suing a responsible company who cares deeply for its customers and the environment. Members of the jury, a trial in this country is not about who has the best sound bites, but it's about seeking the truth. The plaintiff's claim is missing the most important thing: credible scientific evidence. We intend to prove to you that the reliable science says that Drufo has not been shown to cause cancer, and frankly, we may never know what caused Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Drufo is a product that has revolutionized agriculture in America. In bringing Drufo to the market, Lush followed the law. It tested Drufo. There were no valid scientific studies showing Drufo created any significant risks. That is why the Environmental Protection Agency approved it. This is a remarkable product, and not just because it fertilizes vegetation, but because it does so in a way that protects humans, not hurts them. You will hear today that Drufo, unlike any other product, stops dangerous nitrates from getting into our water systems. Today, you will hear from Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt. She will tell you that far from being a money-grubbing corporation, Lush donates 10% of its annual profits to charities and is working very hard to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint. You will also hear from Skylar Weirs, Dakota Weir's twin. Yes, this is an unusual witness to testify against the plaintiff, but Skylar Weirs is an expert in researching any link between Drufo and cancer. She will show you that there's no such link and that the environment needs products such as Drufo. Finally, we will call Dr. Devin Williams, a PhD who has researched Drufo and will tell you that it was properly tested and proven to be safe. She will testify that there's no valid evidence, statistical or otherwise, to show any causal link between Drufo and cancer, because Drufo does not cause cancer. Dakota Weirs will, of course, testify, and we do not dispute the truly terrible diagnosis she has received. You will hear that after her diagnosis, she saw something on television about Drufo. Because of what she saw, she signed up for a lawsuit. But the most important thing about Dakota Weirs is that she wasn't just some casual gardener who only bought Lush Fertilizer. She worked on a daily basis for 4 years in the landscaping company with numerous chemical products. Which one, if any, caused her cancer? We will never know for sure because there will be no medical evidence showing what caused it, and there will be no testimony about the other chemicals she would use around her house. Neither she nor her lawyers looked into the myriad of other chemicals she used during her landscaping job. Plaintiff will also call Carson Durst, a disgruntled ex-employee who was fired from Lush and broke her employment contract. It was not until after Durst was fired that she alleged something was wrong with Drufo. Finally, plaintiff's witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, a horticulturist and entomologist, will bring a prejudiced viewpoint to the witness stand and will rely on invalid and non-peer-reviewed studies about Drufo. Members of the jury, your most important task in this trial is to look at the evidence and apply the law the court gives you. That law requires a plaintiff to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Truffaut is not just dangerous, but in fact caused Ms. Weir's cancer. The court will also instruct you you cannot be influenced by sympathy for Ms. Weir's or prejudice against Lush. You must base your decision off of evidence in the law. This is why I can confidently say that by the end of this case, we will prove to you that Truffaut does not cause cancer. We don't know what caused Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and the regulators who are responsible for evaluating the evidence, the actual scientific studies, have concluded that Truffaut is safe. At the end of this case, my co-counsel Rachel Kidder will ask that you render your verdict for Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Thank you. Plaintiff's first witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Ms. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Okay, Ms. Weirs, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give will be the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Counsel,
Good
you may
afternoon,
inquire.
Ms. I'm sorry, Your Honor. What did you say?
I said you may inquire.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Weirs, or good afternoon, Ms. Weirs.
Afternoon.
Could you start by stating your name and spelling your last for the record?
My name is Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, why are you here today?
I'm here today since I am suing Lush Fertilizer Incorporated for their product, Lush Fertilizer, gave me non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Just before I was set to leave for college, in which I was supposed to go to Juilliard, and after several years of working in the landscaping industry, I started to notice I felt sick all the time. No one knew what was wrong with me, and so after scores of hospital and doctor's visits and a large amount of medical bills, I was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and my life is all but over.
Ms. Weirs, how did you come into contact with Lush Fertilizer?
I worked as a landscaping technician for Haven Landscaping since I was 14 years old. Due to my age, I was primarily responsible for spreading the seed and the fertilizer, one of those being Lush Fertilizer.
And Ms. Weirs, how can you be sure that you actually used Lush Fertilizer?
I had remember seeing the Lush label many times where I worked, and little did I know at the time it caused me my cancer. And once I discovered it was most likely Lush Fertilizer, I then had my old boss send me a photo of the label to confirm I used it.
Your Honor, permission to screen share what has previously been marked as Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Thank you, co-counsel. Ms. Weirs, is this the Lush Fertilizer product label you are referring to?
Yes, it is.
Would you say that this exhibit is a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted. You can publish.
Ms. Weirs, do you see any warnings on this label?
I see that it could cause eye irritation.
Where do you see that, Ms. Weirs?
Underneath the word hazards, there's a section that says caution.
Do you see any safety recommendations?
Yes, I do, under the section labeled user safety recommendations.
If my co-counsel could zoom into that section. Ms. Weirs, please follow along with me as I read these lines. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. So, Ms. Weirs, did you wear protective clothing while working with this product?
Not all the time. It was never enforced. However, I don't see how that would protect me from possible eye irritation.
Have you ever worn clothes that have covered your eyes?
No, and it doesn't say that anywhere on here, I don't believe.
And please follow along as I read the second sentence. Use of a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel testifying.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm not testifying. I'm just reading off an exhibit.
Okay. Any reply?
I do not object on the premise that they are reading off the exhibit, I just ask that they do not testify or put words into the witness's mouth.
Okay, I'll overrule the objection. I think based on the prior questions, this is foundational. She's reading the label and then asking the witness what they think of it. So I'll overrule the objection. Thank you.
Ms. Weirs, did you wear a face mask or respirator while working with Lush Fertilizer?
Again, not all the time. Often it was too hot for that. But however, I also still don't see how an N95 face mask would protect me from eye irritation.
Have you ever seen an N95 face mask that would cover your eyes?
No, I have not.
Thank you. My co-counsel can now stop screen sharing. So, Ms. Weirs, what was it that kind of prompted you to look into Lush Fertilizer as the cause of your cancer?
Well, one day after a pretty serious bout of depression, I was at home on the couch, like I always am now, when I was watching the news and a story popped up.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, I don't think this witness is testifying to an out-of-court statement. If co-counsel, or not co-counsel, if opposing counsel would like to clarify which statement they're objecting to.
Yes, I'm objecting to hearsay. This news story is an out-of-court statement and is being offered for the truth of the matter. Therefore, this is hearsay. And furthermore, we cannot cross-examine a news story.
Response?
Your Honor, my witness actually hasn't testified to a statement from the news story, so there's no statement here.
Okay. I think based on what I heard from the witness was about to say, I was watching a news story and I think that's when the objection came in. Do you intend your witness to testify about what was heard on the news program?
Yes, Your Honor, if my witness would like to testify about that, it would still not be hearsay because this statement is being offered for the effect on Ms. Weirs. I asked her what prompted her to look into Lush Fertilizer as a cause of her cancer. And so she is simply demonstrating what prompted her to investigate this product.
Okay, so the court will overrule the objection. We'll find that the testimony that's about to be received is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but instead for the effect on the listener. The jury will be instructed that this is not to be accepted as truth, what was contained in the statement, but instead just to demonstrate why and how the witness responded to that. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, could you tell us what you heard on that news story?
Yes, what I had saw in the news stated that there was a story about Lush Fertilizer and their main ingredient, Drufo. Someone had leaked some documents stating that Lush Fertilizer lied about the safety of their product and knew that Drufo could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
That's shocking, Ms. Weirs. Is there,
Objection, Your Honor, counsel testifying.
Sustained.
Ms. Weirs, is there anything else that indicated to you that your cancer was caused by Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I have a twin, Skylar, and growing up, Skylar and I participated in pretty identical activities. The only thing that was different in our childhoods is that I had my job at Haven Landscaping. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is environmental, not genetic, and so the only difference is in our environment.
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of the question.
Response?
Your Honor, I asked this witness what else indicated to her that Lush Fertilizer caused her cancer. And if opposing counsel would have let my witness finish, she's explaining a very relevant part of why she believes that Lush Fertilizer caused her cancer. So it is most definitely within the scope of my question.
Thank you. Objection overruled.
Ms. Weirs, if you could continue telling us about your twin, Skylar.
Yes, of course. Again, as I said, we grew up pretty much participating in the same activities. And so in theory, if anything else had caused me my non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Skylar should have it too. The only difference was my Haven Landscaping job, which included exposure to Drufo.
Ms. Weirs, what symptoms do you experience as a result of your non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Rapid weight loss. I often feel fatigued. I have chest pains and chills and enlarged lymph nodes, which are very painful at times.
And how would you say this illness has affected your life?
In short, my life has been ruined. prior to this illness, I was an active member of my community. I volunteered at the local homeless shelter. I was part of National Honor Society and even class president. I just enjoyed going to school and seeing my friends and working hard to get good grades, and I can't enjoy any of that anymore.
In all of this, I mean, what would you say has been the worst part of your cancer?
The worst part of it all has definitely been the loss of my piano. Piano is, or was, my life. With my ability, I was even awarded a full ride scholarship to Juilliard, perhaps the finest music school in the world. And it was my dream.
Can you still play piano?
No, unfortunately not. With my cancer and all the symptoms that go with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, it makes it extremely impossible to even sit down and play the shortest piece. With my fatigue and shortness of breath, trying to sit down for long periods of time at the piano is quite painful. It causes me to bruise, and even sitting in this chair today is hard.
Ms. Spears, is there anything else you'd like to add about piano?
My grandfather had inspired me to play, and playing with him was one of my most favorite things to do. He unfortunately passed away a few years back. And what hurts the most in all of this is that I feel as though I lost him a second time. I can't sit down at the piano and pretend he's there right beside me, playing along with me.
Ms. Spears, now that you can no longer play piano, what are you going to do about the Juilliard scholarship?
I unfortunately had to decline the Juilliard scholarship. I don't see myself ever being able to play the piano the same, despite how hard I worked for that scholarship. It was all I ever wanted.
And now that you've declined the Juilliard scholarship, what do you think your future will look like?
Frankly, I have no idea what the future will hold. I don't know if I'll recover or continue to decline. Even my doctor is uncertain of what care I might need in the future. I'm just so scared.
To reiterate, why are you here today?
I'm here today because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. Lush clearly didn't prioritize the safety of their customers, and I'm suffering the consequences of that choice, and other people will too.
Thank you, Ms. Spears. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. I have the very difficult task of cross-examining someone who has cancer, and I would just like to take this time to express all my sympathy for everything you are going through. However, it is my legal obligation to ask you some questions. Let's start with wearing protective gear when using chemicals. First, your boss did tell you in person to wear a face covering when using lawn chemicals, correct?
Objection, hearsay.
Response.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay because it's being offered for the effect on the listener, besides the truth of the matter. The effect on the listener is that this caused what her boss might have told her might have caused Ms. Weirs to either wear the protective covering or not. So this is why I'm asking this question, and therefore this is not hearsay.
Okay. Reply.
Your Honor, I don't see how this is being offered for the effect on the listener. It is being offered to show what her boss told her and whether what he said was really what he was meaning.
Okay. The court will find that it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It's not, there's nothing in the statement that we're trying to prove the truth of, but instead goes to the effect on the listener and the independent significance of the statement as it relates to the litigation. So the objection will be overruled.
Would you like me to ask that question again, Ms. Weirs?
Yes, please.
First, your boss did tell you to wear a face covering when using lawn chemicals, didn't he?
I was told to a couple times. However, it was never enforced, and many of my colleagues didn't.
So you didn't do it all of the time, did you?
Not all the time. Sometimes it was just too hard to.
And in addition to a face covering, you were supposed to wear long sleeves, correct?
I suppose so, yes, but it wasn't always possible.
And you were also supposed to wear long pants when using the fertilizer?
I suppose so, but it was never enforced.
But you were supposed to, your boss did instruct that you should wear long pants, correct?
He often asked me to, yes, but it was never enforced.
And you were supposed to wear gloves as well, correct?
That is part of it, yes.
But instead, you chose to wear instead you chose to wear shorts, t-shirt, and no mask, correct?
I would have worn all those things if I had known I was going to get this non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Now let's talk about warnings. Your testimony is that Lush Fertilizer should have had a warning on their package, correct?
Many of the other products I used had more extensive warnings, so yes.
But like you just said, many other products had warnings on their packages, didn't they?
Many of the other ones did, yes.
And despite those warnings, you still chose to dress in t-shirts and shorts, Ms. Weirs.
Again, this is only some of the time, not all the time.
But you did sometimes choose to dress in t-shirts and shorts despite the warnings, didn't you?
When it was too hot outside to do that and when I could enjoy the breeze on my face, which I can't even do that anymore.
Furthermore, Lush Fertilizer did have user safety recommendations, didn't they?
Yes, recommendations.
And you've seen the Lush Fertilizer label before, correct?
Yes, I have.
My co-counsel will share screen Exhibit 1. Please direct your attention to the user safety recommendations where it states, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment. Did I read that correctly, Ms. Weirs?
Yes, you did.
But despite those actual recommendations on the label, you didn't always wear the protective gear and the mask, did you?
I didn't see the need to. Why should I be expected to care when Lush clearly didn't care about putting proper warning labels on there?
But Ms. Weirs, they were recommendations from your boss and this label, and you did not follow them, did you?
Again, it was never enforced and many of my colleagues didn't. So no.
Is that a
not
yes
all the
or a
time.
no, Ms. Weirs?
That's a no, not all the time.
Now let's talk about all the chemicals you've been exposed to in your life. It is your expert, Dr. Rogers, a PhD in horticulture and entomology and not a medical doctor, who told you that Drufo was the cause of your non-Hodgkin lymphoma, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you know that non-Hodgkin lymphoma is caused by environmental conditions, including chemicals. Isn't that correct, Ms. Weirs?
That is correct.
And you testified one day you were sitting on the couch and because you were depressed and you saw a news story on television about Drufo, correct?
That was one of the first indications that Drufo most likely caused my non-Hodgkin lymphoma, yes.
And you also saw, and after you saw the news story, that caused you and your father to research Drufo, correct?
Yes, this is true. We then went further into looking at their labels.
And after you researched Drufo, you contacted your old boss.
I did, to confirm that I had used Lush.
You worked with numerous different chemicals at Lush Fertilizer, didn't you, Ms. Weirs?
Again, many of them with more extensive warning labels, but yes.
And you never researched any of those numerous chemicals except Drufo, did you?
I primarily focused on Drufo because it was the strongest suspect and it's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Ms. Weirs, I just need a yes or no answer. You only researched Drufo, correct? You didn't research any of the numerous chemicals that you worked with besides Drufo.
Drufo was the only one I looked into personally, yes.
You also didn't research any of the household chemicals you would use, correct?
There was no need. Again, if it was one of those being the cause, Skylar should have it too.
But Ms. Weirs, my point is you never even researched, you never even looked into any of these other chemicals except Drufo, did you?
There wasn't a need to, so no.
And finally, you only researched the chemical in the company that you are suing right now, correct?
It has all the most evidence, so yes.
And that's only because you saw a news story about it, correct?
That was the first thing that indicated to me that that might be the cause, yes.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you testified that you used some other products at Haven Landscaping. Did those other products have labels on them?
Yes, I believe almost all of the products that I had used had labels, and most of them had much more extensive warning labels. And Lush Fertilizer didn't mention anything about cancer.
Did the other product labels mention anything about cancer?
I don't believe so, no.
To reiterate, why did you not always wear protective gear while working at your job?
For a number of reasons, but ultimately because I didn't believe it would ruin my life as it has done now.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I have no further questions.
Recross.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Weirs, you only researched and you've testified that other chemicals had other warnings on them, correct?
Many of the other ones did, yes, but not all of them.
And yet you didn't choose to research any of them?
Drufo has the most.
But Ms. Weirs, you
evidence, so
testified
I only
that
looked
Drufo didn't
into-
have any warnings, or Lush Fertilizer didn't have any warnings about it. So you chose to research the product with no warnings instead of the products with warnings, correct?
I suppose so, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Weirs, you can be excused. Does the plaintiff have any more witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls to the stand Ms. Carson Durst.
Okay, Ms. Durst, if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you give will be the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Counsel, you may inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. Could you please begin by stating your name and spelling your last for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Carson Durst, spelled D-U-R-S-T.
And Ms. Durst, what is your relationship with Blake Dawncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, who's the defendant in today's case?
Yeah, well, you see, as a kid, I was best friends with Blake's son, Charlie. We were inseparable. We played soccer together. We went to ASU together. And eventually I started working for Blake's company, Lush.
So when did you first begin your employment with Lush Fertilizer?
I first began as an intern with the product research and development team back in June of 2003.
And while employed at Lush, what kind of roles did you take on?
Well, like I said, I started as an intern, but after just 3 months, I was promoted to the product development engineer.
So how did these roles first lead you to work on the research surrounding Drufo?
Objection, Your Honor, assumes fact, not in evidence.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm slightly confused as to what specifically the opposing counsel is objecting to. I believe my question is just asking about Ms. Durst's work and what she was working on while at Lush. She's already testified as to her employment at Lush, and I believe that it's not disputed that Drufo was used at Lush.
Reply.
Your Honor, the opposing counsel asked Ms. Durst how she began working on Drufo, which is something that Ms. Durst has not testified yet to. That assumes a fact, not in evidence.
I think based on the statements from prior witness and opening statements, there's enough in the record that this witness can clearly testify to that. The objection is overruled.
So, Ms. Durst, how did these roles first lead you to work on the research surrounding Drufo?
Yeah, well, when I first started at Lush in 2003, they were just beginning to test the safety surrounding Drufo, and my role as an intern was to research a specific compound that comprises Drufo.
So in your research, did you discover anything that stood out to you?
Well, I did find this one study from England, which concluded that...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, my witness is not testifying to any specific statements to prove the truth of the matter asserted, simply the existence of this study, which she has personal knowledge of.
Reply.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst was about to testify as to the conclusions of a study, which would be an out-of-court statement that is being offered for the truth of the matter. Therefore, it is hearsay.
Okay, objection overruled. You can continue.
So, Ms. Durst, would you like to go ahead and finish your answer? I can also re-ask the question if that would be helpful.
Yes, of course. I'll continue. I did find this one study from England, which concluded that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats. I concluded these findings to my product manager, Jerry Langley, who I believe reviewed it. After that, it may have been compiled into a comprehensive report, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so after this initial research and report, do you know what happened next with Drufo?
Well, the following September, we received another series of emails stating that a second study was being conducted on Drufo.
And do you know what the purpose was of this study?
Yeah, Lush was researching whether or not Drufo was carcinogenic in humans. I mean, I personally felt pressure to document my data in a way that supports a specific hypothesis. I mean, as an experienced product engineer, I feel that reviewing products, it's important to be careful when reviewing products. And I feel like everyone's voices should be heard, but this was just not the case while at Lush.
Your Honor, permission to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4.
That'll be fine.
Okay, if my co-counsel could go ahead and pull that up. Okay, what is Exhibit 4?
It is a printout I kept of one of those emails I received.
And how do you know this?
Because I received the email personally.
Is this a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Your Honor, we move for the admission of Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Response or objection?
Your Honor, while this email is fraudulent, that is something we will prove during our case in chief, and we have no objection at this time.
4 will be admitted, and you're welcome to publish that to the jury.
Thank you. Yes, I move to constructively publish this to the jury.
Granted.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, when did you initially receive this email?
In September of 2003.
And who sent you this email?
It came from Jerry Langley, a rather high up manager while at Lush.
If my co-counsel could go ahead and zoom in slightly to the first paragraph of this email. Ms. Durst, could you please refer to the first sentence of the second paragraph in this email and read aloud?
Of course. Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
Okay, my co-counsel may stop screen sharing now. Thank you. So, Ms. Durst, in this email you received and in the other emails like it, what were your general observation of Jerry Langley and upper management's intent?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm not asking my witness to speculate as to the inner thoughts or feelings of upper management, but rather to describe their own observations as an employee of Lush and to describe the impression left by these emails.
Okay. Objection overruled.
Yeah, so as I was saying, there seemed to come a certain pressure for the studies to be read in a certain way. I would also say in studies like these, it's important to allow for wiggle room in case of a lawsuit such as this one. Regardless of the emails, I would like to say that the company's agenda was certainly made clear during the weekly meetings.
So then, can you recount for us what took place in these weekly meetings?
Well, in December of 2003, we were all called in to present our findings on the second study. I remember one scientist specifically mentioning her concern that Drufo could be—
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, according to Rule 801 D2D, this is not hearsay. It's a statement made by an employee of the opposing party within the scope of their knowledge.
Response, Your Honor.
Sure.
According to Rule 801 D2D, that person, if they are an employee or not, must be authorized by the company to make statements to the public on behalf of the company. This scientist, who is unnamed in this case, is not authorized by the company to make statements on behalf of the company, and therefore it does not fall under Rule 801 D2.
I'll find that it is an admission by a party opponent. Objections overruled.
Thank you. Would you like to continue, Ms. Durst?
Yeah, so this specific scientist was mentioning her concern that Drufo could be carcinogenic and specifically for non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
So what was upper management's response to these concerns?
Well, this definitely seemed to be a significant concern, but towards the end of the meeting, Alex Monroe, an upper echelon manager at Lush, said something along the lines of, let's just keep in the walls until we figure out what we are doing.
So did anything happen after that meeting?
About a month after the meeting, the report hit my desk. It concluded that further analysis would be needed before making any conclusions of Drufo's long-term health effects, such as cancer.
And in this report you received, was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma mentioned specifically?
No, the report did not mention non-Hodgkin lymphoma at all.
And in the report, were any other recommendations made regarding Drufo's safety?
Yes, it did recommend for Lush to bake their fertilizer.
Ms. Durst, to your knowledge, does Lush bake its fertilizer?
No, unfortunately, they do not.
So after all of this happened, did you continue your employment at Lush?
No, you see, after I attempted to raise my concerns surrounding Drufo, Blake received complaints about my work performance. And eventually I started working at Terrace Greenery, where I'm currently the lead product developer. Like I've said, though, I'm not here to talk about all of that, rather my observations while at Lush.
Right. So then, just to summarize for the jury, from these emails you received, these meetings you attended, and your overall time as an employee of Lush Fertilizer, what kind of impression were you left with?
Well, you see, after being hired by Terrace Greenery, Lush decided to sue me. I mean, Blake had ignored my concerns, but was now concerned about my expertise. I felt as though for a long time, Lush has been ignoring ethical concerns, prioritizing profits over their own people. Drufo was just the goose that laid the golden egg.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I have no further questions at this time.
Cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. I have several questions for you as well. Let's begin with your background. On spring break of 2003, you still had not found a job, had you?
I mean, it's really hard to find a job right out of college.
And that would include you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it did.
And naturally, you told your best friend, Charles Doncourt, about your situation, didn't you?
Yes, and he helped me out.
And Charles is the son of Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt?
Yes, he's my best friend.
And so shortly after speaking with Charles, you were then hired by Lush Fertilizer as an intern, correct?
Yes.
Within a year, your performance reviews were not stellar, were they?
No, but I don't really know why I received those. It was only after I attempted to raise my concerns surrounding Drufo that I received those complaints.
But in 2004, you were put on a performance improvement plan, weren't you?
Yes, like I said, I think it was completely unfair, but that is true.
And then again in early 2005, you received yet another negative performance review.
After I attempted to raise my concerns again, yes.
And you, of course, strongly disagreed with all of these, didn't you?
I mean, yes, I think it was unfair that I attempted to raise my concerns, as after all, that was my job.
And so naturally, you went to Ms. Doncourt, your best friend's mother, to try and get her help in the situation. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, she's the CEO and we were close family friends. I thought that she could help out.
And when she would not help you, that left you seething, didn't it?
I mean, in that moment, but yes, I mean, I saw that I had no future at Lush anymore.
And then finally, in 2006, after just 3 years at Lush Fertilizer, you were fired, weren't you?
Yes, I mean, I think it was completely unfair, as I've been saying. I mean, it was after I attempted to raise my concerns, but I mean, I saw I had no future at Lush, so.
But while you were still working for Lush Fertilizer, you applied for a job at Terrace Greenery, isn't that right?
Well, yeah, I saw I had no future at Lush and I needed to find another job, and fertilizer was what I knew, so it made sense.
And while you were working for Lush Fertilizer, you were hired by Terrace Greenery, correct?
Yes, fortunately, Terrace Greenery decided to hire me.
Unfortunately, when joining Lush Fertilizer, you had signed a contract in which you agreed to wait 2 years after termination with Lush Fertilizer to work for any competitor. Isn't that right?
Yes, this has all been handled in another court matter. I signed that on my first day at the job, and while I did break it, I completely forgot about it, and it's all been handled in another court matter.
And as you've mentioned, when Lush tried to enforce this contract, you agreed in a settlement to wait 6 months before working at Terrace Greenery?
Yes, and I did.
Now let's talk about that study you claimed to find in which Drufo may be carcinogenic to rats. Despite it being your job to look for potential dangers and risks, you were only able to find the one study?
I mean, I was only an intern for 3 months, and I did find that pretty good study.
Ms. Durst, weren't you working for Lush Fertilizer for 3 years?
Yes, but I was an intern with the product research and development team for only 3 months.
And then you were promoted to a product development engineer on Drufo's team, weren't you?
Yes, but my job wasn't research when I was promoted. I was promoted to an engineer, not to go.
And in those 3 years, you were only able to find the one study, weren't you?
as I said, I was only a researcher for 3 months. I researched the studies and found that pretty good one during that 3 months. It wasn't my job for the rest of the 3 years.
Is that a yes, Ms. Durst?
Sorry,
Objection
what was the
has
question?
been answered.
If you can answer the question, please.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
You were only able to find one outside study about Drufo, weren't you?
During the 3 months when I was assigned to find studies, yes.
And that study was conducted on rats, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And again, despite it being your job to look for potential dangers and risks, you were unable to find any studies that addressed whether Drufo might have any adverse health effects in humans. Isn't that right?
I mean, rats and humans are pretty similar. And we put in that study, it was the same dose in rats as it would be to humans. So I would say that it's pretty equal. And later during my job, Lush did find another study.
Ms. Durst, I am using your exact words, but I can point you to them in your witness statement if you like. You were unable to find any studies that address whether Drufo might have any adverse health effects in humans. Isn't that right?
I personally, in my 3 months as an intern, could not, no.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Go ahead.
Ms. Durst, while working at Lush, what was your initial role?
My initial role was as an intern for 3 months was to research a specific chemical compound that comprises Drufo and was to find studies in that compound.
And in the other 2 years and 9 months that you worked at Lush, was your job to research Drufo?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I have no further questions.
Recross.
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Durst, you can be excused. Thank you very much for your testimony today. Are there any other witnesses for the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Okay, Dr. Rogers. Dr. Rogers, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, counsel, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers. Rogers is spelled Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am currently employed as a professor of horticulture and entomology at UC Berkeley.
And do you have any prior experience in these fields?
Yes, prior to becoming a professor at UC Berkeley, I was a research analyst at an environmental chemistry and toxicology lab.
And have you published anything on these subjects of environmental chemistry?
Yes, I have published numerous scholarly articles on environmental chemistry and toxicology.
And more specifically, what were these articles about?
These articles, more specifically, were about chemicals and their negative effects on the body. To be more specific, fertilizers and pesticides, which includes Drufo.
And where has this writing been used?
Previously, this writing has been used before litigation boards in order to make recommendations on safety equipment and safety precautions people should use when working with these chemicals.
Your Honor, I offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in environmental toxicology, more specifically the negative effects of Drufo.
Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, may I conduct a brief voir dire?
Please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. I'd like to discuss your profession and your education. You just testified that you are a professor at the University of California at Berkeley in the horticulture and entomology department, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Horticulture is the study of what?
Horticulture is the study of plants and animals.
And entomology is the study of what?
I mean, if you want to simplify it, it's essentially the study of bugs.
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not associated with bugs or gardening, is it?
Not directly.
Now, your professional research interests focus on pesticides, correct?
That is correct.
And the only current project you have listed on your resume involves pesticides, does it not?
That's correct.
And the only classes you are currently teaching involve herbicides and insects, correct?
That's correct.
And of course, herbicides and fertilizer perform opposite functions, don't they?
Yes,
Herbicides help things grow, correct?
that's correct.
And fertilizer is designed to kill things, right?
Yes.
So herbicides have nothing to do with this case, do they?
Not directly.
Now let's discuss your education. You have no formal education having to do with the human body, do you?
Well, I do have my bachelor's in chemistry, and an important part of chemistry is knowing how chemicals react to the body. And, I wouldn't say I was a true scientist, and I wouldn't say I have a degree in chemistry. Granted, it is my undergrad, not my PhD. But
Dr. Rogers, your bachelor's of science degree is in agriculture and chemistry, correct?
yeah, that's correct.
So again, you have no formal education having to do with the human body, do you?
Well, agriculture is the food we eat. It's the cultivation of plants, and we eat plants. So I think that agriculture and chemistry have everything to do with the human body.
Well, Dr. Rogers, in any case, you have not had a single job focusing on the diseases of the human body, have you?
I'm not a medical doctor, no.
And you have not treated someone for any disease, and certainly not for cancer, have you?
Again, I'm not a medical doctor.
So you haven't, have you?
No.
And although your PhD allows you to be called a doctor, your PhD involves gardening and insects, like you said before, right?
Yes, it does.
And not only does your PhD involve gardening and insects, but your current job involves gardening and insects as well, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And finally, your curriculum vitae indicates no knowledge, experience, skill, training, or education having to do with the human body, does it?
Not directly, but once again, I would like to mention kind of almost the
Dr. Rogers, if your attorney would like to get into that on direct examination, they may do so. Your Honor, Lush Fertilizer does not object to Dr. Rogers being received as an expert in environmental toxicology, but we do object to her being received as an expert in the effects of Drufo on the human body. She has no experience in the human body and is not a medical doctor, so she is not qualified to render opinions in that field.
Okay, any response to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers is more than qualified to be entered in both areas that I am trying to tender her in, as she's spent a lot of experience in research toxicology labs and has written numerous scholarly articles which have been published on the negative effects of Drufo.
Any reply?
Yes, Your Honor. Simply reading about the effects that Drufo has on the human body, the medical field, and in particular Drufo and its potential correlation to cancer, is far too complex a subject for someone who has simply read about it, like Dr. Rogers, to render professional opinions in court.
Okay, thank you. Having heard the arguments of counsel, based upon the education, training, and experience of this witness, I will find that she's qualified to provide expert opinions regarding environmental toxicology and the negative effects of Drufo. Counsel, I understand your objection. I think it probably goes to the weight and not the admissibility. So your objection is overruled. Counsel, you can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. You mentioned Drufo. How did you get into this chemical compound?
Well, I first heard about Drufo when it was released on the market, which I believe was 2003. Since then, I kept hearing negative reports about how it was carcinogenic and could be potentially harmful. And eventually, I stumbled across the study that mentioned that Drufo could be carcinogenic.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This isn't hearsay. It goes to the effect on the listener. These studies are what prompted her to start researching on her own and conduct her own study on Drufo.
Any reply?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers just mentioned the studies that originally prompted her to do further research, and this study was found in her further research. Therefore, it does not go to the effect of the listener.
Okay, two things. One, I think you could find that its effect on the listener, but also because this is an expert witness, the expert is always entitled to rely upon information that's not otherwise admissible in support of their opinion. So the objection is overruled.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, or would you just like to finish your response?
I'll just finish if that's okay. And eventually I heard about this study that was done in the UK that said Drufo could potentially be carcinogenic in rats.
And after finding this study that it could be possibly carcinogenic in rats, what did you decide to do?
Well, in true scientist fashion, I decided to do more research and conduct my own study to kind of test the validity of this other study that I heard about.
And can you tell the court about this study that you conducted?
Yes, of course. So I decided to conduct my own study in which I took 3 groups of people. The first group was exposed to Drufo on a regular, maybe daily basis. The second group was exposed to Drufo on occasion, maybe a few times a month, not very often. And the third group was never.
Objection, Your Honor, narrative.
Overruled. You can finish your answer.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. The third group was never exposed to Drufo, and in order to properly conduct my study, I monitored these groups over a period of many years.
And how frequently did you observe these groups?
Over a period of many years, I didn't just let them be or monitor them one time.
Right, and what were your findings?
Well, my findings were alarming to say the least. I mean, I found that the group that was exposed to Drufo on a regular, almost daily basis was 10 times more.
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of the witness's expertise, Dr. Rogers was just admitted as an expert in environmental toxicology and the effects of Drufo. She is now trying to make a medical diagnosis, and this belongs in the medical field, which is outside her area of expertise.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. As she was entered in as an expert in environmental toxicology and the negative effects of Drufo, she should be allowed to testify to one of the negative effects of Drufo, which is non-Hodgkin lymphoma or cancer.
Okay, objections overruled. She can testify regarding the effects of Drufo, which she was qualified to do so.
Please continue, Dr. Rogers.
Okay, anyway, as I was saying, I found that the people who were exposed to Drufo on a daily, regular basis were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with either endocrine or exocrine varieties of cancer, which includes non-Hodgkin lymphoma, than the group who had never been exposed to Drufo. Once again, I would just like to mention that the group who was exposed to Drufo on a regular daily basis was 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. To me, that's astounding. It's not one time, it's not 2 times, but 10 times more likely. To me, there just can't be a coincidence.
And what do you think led your people in your study to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Well, in my professional opinion, I believe that the people who are exposed to Drufo developed cancer because non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not a genetic disease and can only be developed through outside.
Objection, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers is now getting into the specifics of the disease non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This is outside her area of expertise.
Response?
Yes, seeing as these were the subjects of her own study and she has been tendered in the negative effects of Drufo, which include non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I feel as though she has the expertise to testify in this subject.
I agree.
Your Honor,
Objection
if I may.
overruled.
Please continue, Dr. Rogers.
Yes, as I was saying, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not a genetic disease. It can only be contracted through outside environmental factors, such as something coming into contact with the respiratory system or the skin. And I can only assume that this is how Ms. Weirs came into contact with Drufo and how her non-Hodgkin lymphoma developed.
And hearing Dakota's testimony today, in your professional opinion, do you believe that Drufo is what led to Miss Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
In my
Objection, Your Honor. Once again, Dr. Rogers may testify as to Drufo's effect on the human body, but as she's now trying to make a medical diagnosis specifically to Dakota Weir's case, she's not a medical doctor. This is way outside her area of expertise.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. Considering that she has heard the testimony of Dakota and she has dealt with similar people in this scenario, I feel as though she should be allowed to testify. Furthermore, if my witness were allowed to continue, she would talk about how she has examined both the medical records and employment records of Dakota Weirs.
Okay, I'll ask you to lay a little more foundation before she gets into the opinion.
Yes, Your Honor. Have you examined any of Dakota's medical records?
Yes, I've examined all of Miss Dakota Weir's medical records.
And have you examined her employment records?
Yes, I've examined those as well.
And did you hear her testimony today?
Yes, I did.
And based on all of these resources, plus your expertise, do you believe it is Drufo that led to Miss Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes, in my professional opinion, after looking at her medical records, I do believe that Miss Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma was a likely medical probability that it was caused by Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello again, Dr. Rogers. We discussed your credentials a few moments ago, but I have a few more questions for you. First, you have very specific opinions on how to lessen exposure to landscaping chemicals, don't you?
Yes, I do.
You believe that the primary exposure to those chemicals is caused by breathing those chemicals, right?
Yes, and them coming into contact with the skin.
And so you recommended the use of a mask covering the mouth and nose similar to an N95, correct?
Yes, I did.
You also recommended the use of gloves, gloves, long sleeves, and long pants, correct?
Yes, I did.
Based on your study of Ms. Weir's, you know that she did not follow your recommendation on the use of landscaping chemicals, did she?
Unfortunately, she did not.
You know that she should have been wearing a mask while working for Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes, that's what I recommended.
But she didn't do that, did she?
Not to my knowledge, no.
She also should have been wearing long sleeves, long pants, and gloves, right?
Yes.
But she didn't do that either, did she?
No, not to my knowledge.
Again, having reviewed Ms. Weir's medical and employment records, you know that she worked for Haven Landscaping, not Lush Fertilizer, right?
Yes, I am aware of that.
So of course, working for a landscaping company, Ms. Weir's was exposed to many different products and fertilizers in her line of work, not just Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, she was.
And so she was exposed to many different chemicals in her line of work, wasn't she?
Yes, I believe so.
And Dr. Rogers, you are concerned about many of those chemicals, aren't you?
Oh, yes, of course.
But other than Drufo, you didn't research any of those chemicals, did you?
That's not in my witness statement.
Exactly, it's not in your witness statement. So out of all of the chemicals that you're concerned about, the only one you chose to do extensive research on was Drufo. Isn't that true?
Well, when I was asked to write my affidavit, they asked me to put down any relevant information to this case. And I personally didn't find it necessary to put down all of my researches that could take hours.
You didn't find it relevant to put down your research on the potential carcinogenic chemicals in other fertilizer?
Well, considering we're here for Drufo, I don't understand why I should be talking about other chemicals.
And you're not qualified to talk about the other chemicals because you have not done any research on them. Isn't that true?
That, again, is not in my witness statement.
Finally, Dr. Rogers, you hope that Dakota Weirs wins this case, correct?
Yes, I do. I think she deserves all the justice she can get.
Because if she does win this case, it will open the door to class action lawsuits, won't it?
Yes, as it should. No one should have to go through what Dakota Weirs has gone through.
And if it opens the door to class action lawsuits, like you said, you will be an expert in all of those cases, won't you?
Yes, that's the hope.
And you will be paid to be in all of those cases that you hope for, as you're being paid to be in today's case, won't you?
Well, everyone else is being paid to be here. I don't see why me being paid is going to be any different.
Dr. Rogers, the experts are being paid. And as you will be an expert in all of those other cases that you hope will take place, you hope that they take place because you will be paid in all of those cases as you're being paid in today's case, correct?
Well, not only do I strongly believe in justice, the lawyers are being paid. I can only assume the judge is being paid.
Dr.
Everyone
Rogers,
is being
my
paid.
question was very simple.
Why
Dr.
shouldn't
Rogers,
I be paid for my time?
Your Honor, would you please instruct the witness to keep their answers brief as I am on a time crunch here per the rules of mock trial?
Yeah, let's both speak one at a time and keep your answers. If it's a yes or no question, please give a yes or no response.
Dr. Rogers, if all these cases that you hope for take place, you will be paid to be in all of those cases as you are being paid to be in today's case, won't you?
Yes, my work is valuable.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. While you're being paid, do you think this affects your testimony in today's case?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, great. The witness can be excused. Does the plaintiff have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Okay, plaintiff rests. Any motions from either side?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Does the defense intend to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor.
The defense will please call its first witness.
Lush Fertilizer calls Blake Doncourt.
Ms. Doncourt, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give today will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, counsel, you may inquire.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself and spell your last name.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Doncourt, and Doncourt is spelled Doncourt.
Ms. Doncourt, what do you do for a living?
I am the founder and chief executive officer of Lush Fertilizer.
When did you found Lush?
About 22 years now. Time really does fly.
Ms. Doncourt, as you know, Lush Fertilizer is the defendant in this case. What would you like the jury to know about your company?
While we are one of the world's leading producers of yard and commercial fertilizer, I am most proud of our commitment to the betterment of the planet.
Could you expand on that a little bit?
Of course. We donate 10% of our annual profits to charities whose mission is to decrease the global nitrogen footprint. We also promote state and national legislation to educate people worldwide on environmental issues.
Has the company done anything else to aid in the environment?
Oh yes, we started our own charitable organization to help clean the most polluted areas of the Earth's oceans.
Has Lush Fertilizer ever been recognized for its work in the environment?
We have received many awards for our humanitarian work, including the Seal Business Sustainability Awards. I was also nominated for the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award in 2020.
Ms. Doncourt, as you know, the plaintiff is claiming that Lush Fertilizer caused her non-Hodgkin lymphoma. How do you respond to that?
First of all, I am deeply sorry Ms. Weirs has developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I sincerely hope that she recovers quickly. I do understand that people often want to find someone to blame and seek justice, but no one knows Lush Fertilizer better than myself. And I know that Ms. Weir's claim is mistaken because I believe Lush Fertilizer's products do not cause cancer.
Could you please explain to the jury the basis for your belief that Lush Fertilizer does not cause cancer?
We had done extensive research and testing on our products before releasing them to the market. Our goal is to help people, not harm them. And we were very careful to make sure our products would not be a risk to people coming into contact with it.
Does this research and testing have anything to do with why this product does not have a warning label on it?
Yes, because there was little to no risk to people using our products. Under federal and state law, there was no requirement for a warning label.
Do you have any other reasons for your belief that Lush Fertilizer does not cause cancer?
I do. During the testing period, our toxicology research and development team found no significant levels of toxicity, nor did the EPA.
Is there any research showing some sort of associated risk with using your product?
The only thing I'm aware of is what you heard today from Dr. Rogers. During the testing period, I had never heard of such a study, nor have I heard of any sort of study until today's trial.
To your knowledge, are there some chemicals that can cause cancer?
Some can, but not all of them do. And Ms. Weirs has testified to using all sorts of different products.
Do you hold any ill will towards Ms. Weirs because of this lawsuit?
Absolutely not. I do not believe she is the cause of this lawsuit. There are others who have a financial incentive to sue large companies. I mean, we've all seen those commercials of some law firms telling people different products cause different illnesses just so that they can get some money out of a lawsuit. It's not right.
Would you do anything if Drufo was at all dangerous?
I would, of course, put warning labels on all of our products immediately.
Now let's talk about some of the accusations that we've heard in court today. You heard Ms. Durst make the claim that Lush knew about some potential dangers to using Drufo. How do you respond to that?
Ms. Durst only brought these claims up after she was fired and began working for our biggest competitor. Lush Fertilizer was never aware of any risk because there is no risk.
What about that email she produced?
That email is completely fraudulent. I never received it. In fact, we let Ms. Weir's lawyers have access to our entire email system, and they found nothing.
While Ms. Durst was working for Lush Fertilizer, did she ever approach you about any concerns she had?
Not once. And it was her job on the research and development team to look for and report dangers or risks.
How do you respond to Ms. Durst's claim that employees were told to interpret data in a specific manner?
That is not true. Again, our goal is to help people, and we cannot do that if we're lying to them. None of the reports I saw showed any connection between our products and cancer.
Now let's address the issue of how Lush is made. You've heard the accusation that if Lush baked its fertilizer, it would be safer. How do you respond to that?
It is true that we don't bake our fertilizer, and cost happens to be a reason because Lush Fertilizer is a business.
But would baking the fertilizer make it any safer?
No, it wouldn't make any measurable difference according to our data.
Finally, Ms. Doncourt, what are you asking of this jury?
Although I feel terrible about Ms. Weir's illness, in a court of law, the truth should matter. And the truth is, there's no evidence that Lush Fertilizer caused Ms. Weir's cancer. I ask the jury to give my corporation the same consideration as the plaintiff.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt.
Good afternoon.
You were formerly married to Morgan Doncourt, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you're now in the process of a rather contentious divorce.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance and 403.
State the relevance, please.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm simply laying foundation for a further line of questioning regarding Ms. Doncourt's credibility and financial bias in this case.
With regard to
Your
403.
Honor.
Just a minute. If you can also respond to 403.
Yes, Your Honor. Do you mind if I take a moment to reference the exact wording of the rule?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask counsel, which part of 403 are you stating is the basis for your objection?
This line of questioning is far more prejudicial than probative, Your Honor.
Okay. Any response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. I actually believe that Rule 403 is relevant. And like I've said, I'm beginning to lay foundation in regards to the witness's credibility. It's not more prejudicial than probative, but rather just to show Lush's finances and Ms. Doncourt's financial decisions, which affect the safety of Drufo.
Okay, any reply?
Yes, Your Honor. With the 50% divorce rate within the American population, Ms. Doncourt's specific divorce is not relevant to this case whatsoever. And quite frankly, it is an invasion of her privacy.
The court will find under 401 and 402 that the evidence is relevant because I think it does have the likelihood to make a fact of consequence in the case more or less likely. With regard to 403, I think I would have to make a finding that the danger of unfair prejudice substantially outweighs the probative value, and I don't find that it does. I think all good evidence is prejudicial. That's what makes it relevant. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you. So, Ms. Doncourt, just to clarify that, you are in the process of a rather contentious divorce right now?
Earlier, I was in a divorce.
Right. And a judge has now ordered you to pay your ex-spouse a significant sum of money each month, correct?
I do have to pay some money, but I still have plenty of money to support myself and my new partner.
So you're also responsible for paying back the investors who provided Lush Fertilizer with seed funds, correct?
Yes, of course, in business, it is important to give a good return to investors.
Of course. So you would say that you have a considerable amount of financial pressures as the CEO of Lush?
I have financial pressures no more than any other CEO will find. Running a business is expensive, but I pride myself on the safety of all my products.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. Are you aware of a process called baking?
I am.
And are you aware that baking your fertilizer would be the only way to 100% guarantee that it is not carcinogenic?
There was already no reasonable risk to our product, but I suppose baking would remove the minuscule amount of carcinogenicity in our product. But again, there's no reasonable risk.
Ms. Doncourt, just to clarify, it would be the only way to remove that risk, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
And you heard Carson Durst testify in court today.
I did.
And you heard her testify that in the report compiled by your own scientists, they recommend baking your fertilizer?
Well, I cannot testify to what Ms. Durst said. I never mentioned that in my witness statement, so I can't say for sure.
I'm simply asking if you heard Ms. Durst testify to that today in court.
I believe so, yes.
And is it true that by not baking your fertilizer, you would increase your profits by 6% in the first year and by an additional 2% per year after that?
We would save some money, but again, I would never do anything to risk the health of people.
Of course, but you needed these earnings to pay back the investors who provided your company with seed funds.
Again, it is very important to give a good return to investors, but I'm also an environmentalist, so I strive for safety.
Okay, but just to clarify, without these earnings, you would not have the money to pay back the investors who provided your company with seed funds.
I can't say that I wouldn't be able to pay them back. I just have more money and it's a little more freeing to do so, but I can't say I wouldn't be able to pay them back without those saved profits.
Ms. Doncourt, is it your statement here today in court that you did not need these extra earnings to pay back Lush's investors?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? The audio went weird.
Of course. Is it your statement here today in court that you did not need these extra earnings to pay back Lush's investors?
That saved profit would go to pay off the investors.
Right. So you also needed this extra income to pay your ex-spouse, correct?
I don't say specifically I needed those earnings to pay off my ex-spouse. I said that I still have money to support myself, but I do have to pay alimony.
Sure. So you chose not to bake your fertilizer because you would otherwise not be able to meet your financial responsibilities?
I chose to not bake the fertilizer because there was no reasonable risk in our products and it was an unnecessary extra step.
And Ms. Doncourt, you chose not to bake your fertilizer because you would otherwise not be able to meet your financial responsibilities.
Well, like I said, there was no reasonable risk. It was unnecessary. We would save money.
That is not my question. I'm just asking, did you choose not to bake your fertilizer because you would not be able to meet other financial responsibilities?
I did have a lot of financial responsibilities. I can't say for sure I wouldn't be able to meet those financial responsibilities with the saved profits.
Thank you. You say in your statement that baking your fertilizer would also be too costly for the small risk it would eliminate.
Exactly. There is very little risk and it was an unnecessary extra step.
Of course, but that small risk is ensuring 100% that your consumers are not exposed to a potential carcinogen.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that question?
Of course. So that small risk you're referring to is ensuring 100% that your consumers are not exposed to potential carcinogens.
again, there was very little risk.
Thank you. I have no
and-
further questions, Ms. Doncourt.
Okay, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. First, Ms. Doncourt, does your divorce affect your testimony in court today?
Absolutely not. I've tried to put that behind me. I have a new partner now, and I'm very happy with that.
And finally, Ms. Doncourt, opposing counsel was asking you about why you did not bake your fertilizer, but she didn't allow you to finish your answer. Would you like to finish your answer now?
Yes, as I was saying, there was no reasonable risk in our product before the baking process. And it was an unnecessary extra step.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross.
I have no recross, Your Honor.
Okay, the witness can be excused.
Thank
Does
you,
the
Your
defense-
Honor.
Does the defense have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. Lush Fertilizer calls Skylar Weirs.
Okay. Ms. Weirs, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you give will be the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, counsel, you can inquire.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Skylar Weirs.
Are you related to Dakota Weirs?
Yes, Dakota is my twin.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Weirs?
I am an investigative journalist for Rationalist Magazine.
What is Rationalist Magazine?
It is a quarterly science education and science magazine published by the Rationalist Society.
And what is Rationalist Society?
Well, it's a nonprofit that believes in real science and is against fake science.
Ms. Weirs, as you know, this case involves Drufo. Do you have any experience with Drufo?
Yes, I got an assignment from my magazine to investigate Drufo and specifically whether it causes cancer.
Did you get this assignment because of Dakota's diagnosis?
No, this happened way before Dakota was diagnosed.
So what did you do once you got this assignment?
Once I got this assignment, I conducted extensive research into the connection between Drufo and cancer.
What did you do once you finished your research?
Once I finished, I wrote an article challenging the false narrative that Drufo causes cancer.
Please tell the jury what steps you took in your research on Drufo.
Over the span of a year, I researched publications that were issued by various agritech companies.
And then what did you do?
Then I tracked down and reviewed the research studies referenced in those publications.
And what did you do after that?
After that, I researched publications by the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, the NASDA.
Do you intend to render any opinions outside of the research and investigation you've conducted?
No, of course not.
Your Honor, based on Ms. Weir's extensive research and therefore knowledge, Lush Fertilizer offers Skylar Weirs as an expert in the modern state of agritech, consistent with the court's pretrial ruling.
Okay. Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for a brief voir dire.
Yes, please, go ahead.
You have no degree in toxicology, correct?
No, I do not.
And you also don't have a college degree at all, correct?
I don't need one for the job I have.
Right, but you have no formal education in the field of modern agritech, correct?
I have conducted extensive research, and I have knowledge of it.
But no formal education?
No, that would be right.
And no formal or real field working experience, yes?
Well, I would consider research real fieldwork experience, if that's what you're saying.
You haven't had a job where you have dealt with modern agritech, for example, researching it or developing products in this area?
Well, I've had a job researching that. That is my job right now. But if you're talking about physical, like being physically there with the product, no, I have not.
Physically, you haven't. Okay. And your only knowledge is from the mere year of research you did reading some articles online, yes?
It was extensive research. It wasn't mere.
But it was a year of research?
Yes, it was over a year. That was when my research was conducted.
Your Honor, I object to this witness being entered as an expert, as according to Rule 702, their scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will not assist the jury as they don't have the proper qualifications to testify. While they only need one of 5 factors, being knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education, she has none of the factors, excluding a small amount of knowledge she gained from a mere year of research.
Okay, response?
Yes, Your Honor. You held in your pre-trial rulings that Lush Fertilizer can show that Skylar Weir spent considerable time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications written by those companies, researching references listed in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and NASDA. You held if such facts are confirmed at trial, they are sufficient to establish that Skylar Weir has specialized knowledge beyond that held by the average juror, and she will be allowed to testify regarding agritech, the modern state of agritech, under Rule 702. We have complied with your order. Skylar Weir has testified to all these things. Therefore, she should be permitted as an expert in the modern state of agritech under Rule 702.
Okay, reply.
Yes, Your Honor. While the pre-trial ruling does say this, I still feel as though they're not qualified, considering the only knowledge they have is based on of a single year of research.
Okay, thank you. I will find, based on the foundation which has been laid today, that based upon this witness's education, training, and/or experience, that there is sufficient foundation for this witness to be qualified as an expert in modern, what was it, agrotechs?
The modern state of agritech.
Thank you. Therefore, the objection is overruled. You may inquire.
Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying on behalf of Lush Fertilizer?
I love Dakota. Her condition is truly terrible and has had a horrible effect on our family, but I would be a liar if anything I said or did pushed the idea that Lush Fertilizer causes cancer.
Let's talk about your research. What did you conclude about Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer has been the target of false science.
Did your research show why it has been targeted?
Yes, competitors are spending billions of dollars to destroy Lush's reputation because Lush's patented breakthrough Drufo threatens their profits.
In your research, have you seen these competitors' tactics used successfully?
Yes, for example, when Monsanto introduced GMOs and was on the path to eliminating malnutrition worldwide, a misinformation campaign tried to bury it.
Based on your extensive research, do you have an opinion about whether or not Lush Fertilizer is an environmentally responsible company?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
Lush Fertilizer is definitely environmentally responsible. They donate 10% of their annual profits to reducing nitrogen contamination.
Does Lush Fertilizer do anything else to help the environment?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer CEO Blake Doncourt also started a charity to help clean up dead zones, like the one in the Gulf of Mexico and other oceans, which are caused primarily by an overuse of fertilizers that don't contain an effective bonding agent, such as Drufo.
Let's discuss Drufo and its purposes. What inspired the use of Drufo?
There is a huge nitrogen contamination problem in the world today, and that is what inspired the use of Drufo.
What do you mean by that?
Well, elements such as nitrogen are essential for plant life. Weeds like clover pull nitrogen from the air and deposit it into the soil. No more weeds, no more nitrogen. Because the soil now cannot support the nice long grass on its own, grass seed companies are forced to replace the missing nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen.
Is that a problem?
Absolutely, this is a huge problem because it leads to nitrogen contamination of the groundwater.
Does synthetic nitrogen cause any other problems?
Yes, synthetic nitrogen is also extremely harmful for the environment. Runoff causes dead zones, like the one in the lake, like the one in the Gulf of Mexico that's the size of New Jersey.
Is synthetic nitrogen harmful in any other way?
Yes, it also harms the human reproductive system by causing neural tube defects, diabetes, and thyroid conditions.
Is there anything else?
Yes, synthetic nitrogen causes cancer. It also causes methemoglobinemia, which is commonly known as blue baby syndrome.
You previously stated that you conducted research on Drufo. We know it's an ingredient in Lush Fertilizer, but what is your understanding of how Drufo connects to all of these problems caused by synthetic nitrogen?
Well, Drufo is a chemical used in fertilizer. It bonds to both the grass and Lush Fertilizer's active ingredients, which are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and prevents these active ingredients from being washed away.
What is the purpose of Drufo?
Well, Drufo is used in order to stop the nitrogen contamination problem that I just talked about. It stops this through the fertilizer, which stays in the ground. as much less washes away.
Why is it important that Lush Fertilizers products stay in the ground for long periods of time?
Well, it means that these chemicals only need to be applied once or twice a year and not all season long.
Does Drufo have any other benefits?
Yes, Drufo also reduces the solubility of Lush fertilizer, so the nitrogen in this product is way less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways.
Is there anything else?
Yes, Drufo is also an effective pesticide, so Lush doesn't have to add any other pesticides, and this is helpful to the environment and protects us as humans.
Let's now discuss your research concerning Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. What did the research show?
The research concerning whether Drufo causes cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma is inconclusive at best.
What do you mean it's inconclusive at best?
I mean, I have seen no real research showing that Drufo causes cancer. It is clear, however, that certain pesticides do cause cancer. Since Drufo actually reduces the amount of harmful chemicals being let into the environment, Drufo can reduce cancer.
Why do pesticides matter?
Well, pesticides are by definition poison. Their intended function is to kill certain organisms that threaten the health of a plant or a crop. Virtually every commercial pesticide has well-known carcinogens for humans.
Finally, based on your extensive research, do you have an opinion about the relative risks and benefits of Drufo?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
I could find nothing conclusive about any risks. My studies showed that Drufo does not cause cancer. However, it does prevent harmful chemicals from being released into the watershed and further harming us humans.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs.
Good afternoon.
You and your twin Dakota have never had the stereotypically close twin relationship, yes?
Well, we love each other. We're twins, but no, we haven't been stereotypically close.
And you say that some people are even suggesting that you're here today to undermine your twin Dakota, yes?
I'm sorry, could you restate that question?
Yes, in your statement, you stated that some people suggest you are here testifying.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper use of a witness statement. A witness statement should only be used to impeach or refresh.
Okay, so your objection is improper impeachment?
Yes.
Okay, response?
Allow me to rephrase the question.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Did you say that some people have suggested you are here today to undermine your twin Dakota?
I love Dakota. She is my twin and is battling a horrible disease. I am not here to undermine her.
I understand that, but you say that some people have suggested you are here.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, improper impeachment. Counsel saying that Ms. Weirs said something refers to her witness statement.
Overruled.
You say that some people suggest you are here today testifying to undermine your twin Dakota.
Some people have claimed that, but that is completely false.
Your writing generates your income, right?
Well, I write. I'm a freelance journalist, but because people have hardly any respect for the truth, I also work a part-time job at Applebee's.
Right, so people don't have respect for your truth, but your articles haven't been lucrative, yes?
Lucrative meaning they haven't produced enough money for me to live off of them.
Right. Even further, you're in some financial debt, yes?
A bit.
And this is because you're a bit of a gambler, yes?
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe prejudicial or over probative is only to the length of testimony. For example, like in a murder trial, it would be many pictures of a dead body, which would be prejudicial to the jury. I'm just asking to clarify to the credibility of this witness.
Okay, reply.
Yes, Your Honor. The 403 objection is not limited to a murder case or pictures of a dead body. It still applies here as Ms. Weir's gambling has no effect on the truthfulness of her testimony. Therefore, its prejudicial effect substantially outweighs its probative value.
All right, any further response?
Yes, Your Honor. This goes to the potential financial bias of this witness, which does go to her testimony today. It's an expert witness.
Okay. Based upon that record, it does appear as though that the financial bias of this witness would be highly probative, and therefore I cannot find that the potential for any prejudice would substantially outweigh the probative value. So the objection is overruled.
Allow me to re-ask my question. You're a bit of a gambler, correct?
No more than the average person.
Right, and you're only 20 years old, correct?
I know it sounds old, but yes, I'm only 20.
But not old enough as the legal gambling age is 21 years old, right?
I cannot testify as to the legal gambling age, as this is not recorded in my witness statement.
Okay, but you weren't a casual gambler, right?
Well, I can't play sports, but I love them. Sports betting mostly is what I like to bet on because I have horrible grass allergies that prevent me from playing. So betting was really my only way to be a part of the game.
All right, and your gambling got so extreme that it put you into a hole you haven't been able to climb back out of, correct?
Well, I'm working on it. I've been working very hard. And so sometimes people make mistakes, and that was one mistake that I have made.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
But your dad was helping you a little bit financially, correct?
Actually, it was my mom who was helping me. And after she died, my dad has to use that money to pay for Dakota's hospital bills.
So he cut you off.
He cut me off verbally because he didn't like my decision not to go to college. But he never cut me off from the money.
All right. You say that you would never claim there are no risks from modern agricultural products, yes?
That would be correct.
That every product on the market has several well-known carcinogens, yes?
I believe so.
And pesticides are by definition poison, correct?
Yes, they are, but they are designed to kill undesirable organisms, such
Right,
as
but Drufo is an pesticide, yes?
yes, it's designed to kill pests like bugs.
All right. Lush fertilizer has the active ingredient of nitrogen, yes?
It does.
And you testified earlier that nitrogen has very harmful effects, including cancer, yes?
I testified that synthetic nitrogen can have harmful effects. Nitrogen itself could potentially be harmful, just as phosphorus or potassium could potentially be harmful.
And no chemical fertilizer will ever be truly safe, yes?
If it were truly safe, it wouldn't do its job. It wouldn't produce nice long grass by killing the pests that want to kill the grass.
So is that a yes, no chemical fertilizer will ever be truly safe?
No, no fertilizer will never be truly safe.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect,
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
please.
Before I begin, may I inquire as to a time check?
You have 11 minutes and 3 seconds remaining.
Ms. Weirs, does your gambling or financial situation have any effect on the truthfulness of your testimony today?
Absolutely not. That was in my past, and I'm trying to look to the future and to this court case.
Why are you here today?
I'm here today to tell the court the truth about Drufo, that the research is inconclusive.
Outside the scope of my cross.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Counsel attacked the credibility of Ms. Weirs several times on cross-examination, and I'm just going into her credibility and her motive.
Reply.
I didn't ask anything about why she's testifying here today. I simply asked about her familial background. I don't understand what this has to do with my cross.
I think cross-examination into financial motive and bias, and then the other line of questioning regarding whether or not she was trying to undermine her sister does attack her credibility and opens the door to this rehabilitation. So we'll overrule the objection.
Let me ask that question again, Ms. Weirs. Why are you testifying in court today?
I'm testifying here in court today because I want people to know, I want the court and the jury to know the truth about Drufo. The research is inconclusive. We simply cannot know what caused my sister's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and that is why I'm here today.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. The witness can be excused. Thank you for your testimony. Does the defense have any other witnesses to offer today?
Lush Fertilizer calls Dr. Devin Williams.
Okay, Dr. Williams, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, counsel, you can inquire.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your purpose for testifying at this trial?
To provide the jury with the facts concerning Drufo.
Could you please start by telling them what you do for a living?
Certainly. I work at Lush Fertilizer as the head of toxicology research and development.
And tell us a little bit about your education.
I have a bachelor's in toxicology from the University of Utah, a master's in forensic toxicology from CSU, and a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology from CSU. I also completed a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Prior to Lush, do you have any professional experience?
Yes, after I got my BS, I was a toxicologist for the chief medical examiner in Larimer County. After my PhD, I became a professor at CSU in the School of Pharmacy and Allied Health. Then I became a professor of toxicology and pathophysiology at the University of Colorado.
Do you have any current academic obligations, Dr. Williams?
Yes, I still teach at CSU, and I am also a professor of forensic toxicology at the University of New Mexico.
Do you happen to have any certifications?
Yes, I have multiple certifications in the area of toxicology. I could list them if you'd like.
No, thank you. That won't be necessary. What has been the emphasis of your professional career?
Understanding how biological systems respond to environmental interventions, including inorganic compounds and agriculture-enhancing organophosphorus products.
Finally, when did you first begin working with Lush?
In 2010.
Your Honor, Lush Fertilizer offers Dr. Devin Williams as an expert witness in toxicology.
Any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, hearing no objection, this witness will be received as an expert in the field of toxicology and can issue opinions regarding toxicology.
Let's start by having you describe Lush Fertilizer.
Lush Fertilizer does what its name describes. It produces agricultural products. Lush is an environmentally responsible company. The focus of my job is to keep Lush environmentally aware, to play a role in keeping the planet safe. In fact, I am the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
Today, we will be discussing the potential harmful effects of Drufo on the human body. Have you ever done anything like this before?
Yes, I am trained precisely to know how to tell if a substance is going to harm the average human and how to neutralize any potential harmful effects.
Why does Lush use Drufo in their fertilizer?
Well, as we have heard, Drufo is revolutionary because it binds to the ingredients in the fertilizer and to the grass or other plants on which the fertilizer is sprayed. That way, less fertilizer needs to be sprayed and less fertilizer washes away into the soil, thereby interrupting the eutrophication process at the very beginning.
Is eutrophication process? That sounds pretty complicated. Could you please explain that to us?
In layman's terms?
Yes, in layman's terms, so we can understand it better.
Certainly, eutrophication is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural products. Actually, excess nitrates are, I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. I'm losing my place entirely. Do you mind if I start over and you ask the question again?
Of course. So could you please explain the eutrophication process in layman's terms to us, Dr. Williams?
Certainly. Eutrophication is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural runoff. Excess nitrates are the cause of eutrophication because unused nitrogen from fertilizers is converted into nitrates by bacteria in the soil.
Is that bad?
Yes, it is then carried into streams and lakes by rain and irrigation runoff, where it causes dense algae blooms, killing fish and harboring bacteria that is harmful to humans. The very purpose of Drufo is to stop nitrates from getting into streams and lakes and thus helping to save the environment and human lives.
Does the environment really need products such as Drufo, Dr. Williams?
Absolutely. Without products such as this, human exposure to dangerous chemicals will continue to get worse.
Today, we will be discussing non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Can we refer to it as NHL for brevity's sake?
Certainly.
The plaintiff claims her NHL was caused by her use of Drufo. What has your research shown in regard to this claim?
The use of Drufo has not been shown to significantly increase the risk of NHL or any other cancer.
Could you please explain that?
Certainly, some fraction of the people who use Drufo coincidentally contract NHL, just as some fraction of the people who do not use Drufo coincidentally contract NHL. My point is that the science does not show a statistically significant difference between those two groups of people. The incidence of NHL in people who use Drufo and people who do not use Drufo is statistically similar.
Would you mind explaining that to us in layman's terms?
Statistically, there is no elevated risk of NHL for people who use Drufo.
Then how do you explain the testimony of Dr. Rogers, the plaintiff's expert witness?
First, Dr. Rogers specializes in horticulture and entomology, which means plants and bugs. Second, Dr. Rogers looked at people who use Drufo in what she called a prolonged exposure, but she did not account for the fact that people with a prolonged exposure to one type of fertilizer use all sorts of products and are exposed to many different environmental conditions. Dr. Rogers' failure to do so makes that opinion invalid because it compares apples to oranges.
Is that all Dr. Rogers did wrong?
No, she did not look at the lifestyles of the average agricultural worker and the rest of the population. Not studying the environments in which they live contributes to the invalidity of those conclusions.
Do you have any other criticism of Dr. Rogers' opinion?
Yes, Dr. Rogers cites only her own research, and her study has never been replicated, which violates the scientific method. Also, there are absolutely no other published studies reaching the same conclusion. Furthermore, her work was not peer-reviewed, which is a hallmark of a valid study.
Today, we believe plaintiff will bring up on your cross-examination that Drufo has been banned in France. Do you know why it was banned?
Yes, I do know, and I would like to point out that it wasn't just France banning it, it was the whole European Union.
Why did the European Union ban Drufo?
The European Union banned Drufo due to nitrates, not any concerns about cancer.
What do you mean the ban was due to nitrates?
Well, under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer formulations may be used that contribute more than incidental nitrate accumulation as determined in lab tests.
Is there a problem with lab tests, Dr. Williams?
Well, lab tests create unrealistic conditions that do not duplicate nature. In America, the government's approval is based on observing fertilizers in the ground, not in a petri dish.
Did Lush do anything to appeal the EU's ban?
No, it would have been too expensive a process for a brand new company. We decided to take out Drufo and our products sold in the EU until we finish a study that will show to the EU that Drufo will actually reduce nitrates in the water system. We are hopeful the EU will change its mind then.
Finally, Dr. Williams, have you come to the conclusion on whether or not Ms. Weir's NHL was caused by her use of Drufo?
I have.
What is that conclusion?
First, I must express my sympathy for Ms. Weirs. No one should have to endure the things she has. But to a reasonable degree of scientific probability, Drufo did not cause her cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Williams.
Good afternoon. And by the way, it's Dr. Williams.
You lead the research labs at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
I do.
And you've been working with this company for roughly a decade?
I have.
So you admit that you have a pretty significant financial bias in the outcome of this case, right?
I don't quite understand your question.
Well, you're very involved with Lush, so wouldn't you say that you have a pretty significant financial bias in the outcome of today's case?
I would not call it significant.
But you do have a financial bias.
A small one, yes. As an employee of Lush, I have a bias.
Now, you were not a part of the original Drufo development team, were you?
I was not.
When you started working at Lush, half of this original Drufo development team had already left the company.
Correct?
So am I correct in saying that scientists were coming and going during various stages during the analysis of Drufo?
Yes, I believe so.
And the chaos of this turnover began to prevent tests from being completed on time, didn't it?
I don't believe I used the word chaos. I don't think it was chaotic.
Okay, but the turnover began to impact when tests were being done, correct?
Began to impact testing timelines, but not significantly.
Okay, and you were hired to help ensure that tests would be completed on time, correct?
I was hired as, I was hired to do that kind of thing.
So Lush actually made changes to its workforce when tests weren't being done on time?
I don't think I understand your question.
Well, if you were hired because tests weren't being done on time, isn't it fair to say that Lush made changes to its workforce when tests weren't being completed fast enough?
No, I was hired because of my qualifications, but part of the job they gave me was to help make sure that Drufo became properly studied.
But isn't it true in your statement that your role was to fill in as technician as the turnover was beginning to impact testing timeliness?
Yes, that was my job. I was qualified for it. That's why they hired me.
Okay. When you were hired, Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush, told you that she needed you to keep Lush's Drufo products cost effective, correct?
What company doesn't want their products to be cost effective? Yes, that was part of my job.
So being cost effective was definitely a priority at Lush.
Safety was the first priority, but cost effectiveness was another priority.
Let's talk about that safety. So your main job at Lush is to oversee work on environmental impacts, not actually ensure that Lush's products are safe for human use. Is that correct?
Making sure that Lush's products are environmentally safe, yes.
Okay, now, did you say in your statement that a valid study would need to compare something like farm laborers who use Drufo fertilizers to farm laborers who use fertilizers without Drufo?
Yes, I believe I say that in my witness statement.
And did you bother to do that, doctor? Did you bother to create a valid study that would actually tell you if—
Objection, Your Honor, compound question.
Overruled. You can repeat your question.
Doctor, I asked you, did you bother to take the time to create a valid study on the safety of Drufo in humans?
I don't think I say anything about this in my witness statement.
So you have never personally conducted studies on the safety of Drufo?
It's not my job to personally conduct a study on Drufo.
Right, so you never have conducted a study on the safety of Drufo.
Exactly, that's not my job.
And furthermore, nowhere in your statement did you say that Lush has conducted studies on the safety of Drufo.
Just because I don't say that in my statement doesn't mean that Lush hasn't conducted studies on Drufo's safety.
But you didn't say this in your statement, correct?
That wasn't part of my job to conduct specific studies on Drufo's safety, so I don't see why I would have put it in my witness statement.
So let me just get this straight. You are testifying in court today that Drufo is safe for human use, but you and the company that you worked for have never actually conducted studies on the safety of Drufo in humans. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. I never said that the company I work for never conducted any studies on Drufo safety. I said I specifically and I personally have never conducted any studies on Drufo safety.
But didn't you just tell me that nowhere in your statement did you talk about Lush actually conducting studies on the safety of Drufo?
I don't believe I say that in my statement. That doesn't mean that Lush didn't conduct studies on Drufo's safety.
Okay, now the only study that you actually referenced in your statement was the study conducted by Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
I believe I also referenced the fact that Lush is currently creating another study on Drufo, but yes, I also referenced Dr. Rogers' study.
Ms. Williams, while you claim that Drufo is safe for human use, Lush often asked you to postulate as to broader outcomes than could actually be supported by data, correct?
Excuse me, it's Dr. Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Williams.
And could you please repeat your question?
Lush asked you to postulate as to broader outcomes than could actually be supported by your data, correct, Dr. Williams?
I am often asked to postulate as to broader outcomes. That's part of my training.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, what is your job at Lush Fertilizer? What does it entail?
Part of my job is to make sure that Drufo stays environmentally friendly.
And what was Lush's top priority?
Making sure that Drufo is safe for the environment and for human use.
And Lush did conduct studies on Drufo.
It did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross.
Briefly, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, nowhere in your statement did you say that Lush's priority was to keep its products safe, did you?
Can you show me in my witness statement? I don't quite remember any of that.
Do you have a copy of your statement in front of you?
No, could you please screen share it, perhaps?
Could my co-counsel share this witness's affidavit, please? Just give us one moment. But just to clarify my question, Dr. Williams, I am asking because you just testified that Lush's priority was safety, but nowhere in your witness statement did you say anything about safety. Is that correct?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, we can review this statement, but I do not think we'll find anything about safety. So I move to strike the witness's previous statement that Lush's priority was safety.
Response.
Your Honor, on cross-examination, they were cross-examining Dr. Williams. She was able to answer that one of their top priorities was safety. And I only brought this up because this came up on cross-examination.
Any reply?
My cross made the point that Lush's priority wasn't safety.
Okay, so what I think you're trying to do here in response to the motion to strike is to attempt to strike testimony based on a prior inconsistent statement, which really wouldn't be appropriate under the circumstances. So I'm going to deny the motion, and the jury can evaluate the credibility of the witnesses they see fit based upon your questioning and her answers.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Okay. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
Lush Fertilizer rests, Your Honor.
Any motions from either side?
No, Your Honor.
And none for the... Okay, we'll move on to closing statements. Does the plaintiff wish to give a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Lush Fertilizer had a duty to exercise reasonable care to protect their consumers from harm. Instead, Lush Fertilizer chose to put profits over people, and this decision had consequences. Members of the jury, my co-counsel and I had the burden to prove today by a preponderance of the evidence each element of negligence. This means that we had to prove that it is more likely than not that Lush is liable for its negligence. This is the lowest burden of proof in our judicial system, and we have met this burden. The defense has asserted an affirmative defense of contributory negligence. In order to reduce the damages awarded to the plaintiff, opposing counsel must prove each element of the affirmative defense by a preponderance of the evidence. They have failed to prove any of these elements. Dakota Weirs used to be an active member of her community. More than anything, she loved to play the piano. Just before she was set to leave for Juilliard to pursue her dream of becoming a professional musician, Dakota began to feel sick all the time. After countless hospital visits and costly medical bills, Dakota was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The evidence today showed that Dakota's cancer was caused by Lush fertilizer, which contains a carcinogenic chemical called Drufo. Dakota was exposed to Drufo through her work as a landscaping technician, and little did she know at the time, but this chemical would come to ruin her life. Opposing counsel has tried to tell you that this is all somehow Dakota's fault, saying that she did not wear the proper protective clothing. Members of the jury, do not let them misguide you into thinking that anyone else is to blame. Dakota said herself that if she had known that Lush fertilizer was carcinogenic, she wouldn't have gone anywhere near the product. My co-counsel and I called expert witness Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. She testified that her study found that those exposed to Drufo were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. Lush fertilizer ignored these claims because they needed to profit, even if that meant putting profits over people. Even Dr. Devin Williams, Lush's own head of research, failed to provide any valid studies that verified the safety of Drufo. Further, Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush, testified that Lush hid data that identified Drufo as a carcinogen and proceeded to put their products on the market, jeopardizing the lives of each one of its customers. Members of the jury, not only did Lush know that Drufo was carcinogenic, Lush knew exactly how to make Drufo safe. Baking the fertilizer would have removed any carcinogens from the product. Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt, admitted that Lush does not bake any of their products, saying that it was just too expensive for the small risk it would eliminate. Members of the jury, is cancer a small risk? So, why did Lush need to cut costs? Blake Doncourt testified about the immense pressure she faced to pay back Lush's investors. She also spoke about her recent divorce and how she's now required to pay her ex-spouse a significant sum of money each month. Removing carcinogens from its products just wasn't in the budget for Lush or Ms. Doncourt. Once again, Lush fertilizer chose profits over people. My co-counsel and I have met our burden of proof in today's case by proving all of the elements of negligence. We ask that you return a verdict in favor of Ms. Dakota Weirs and award damages in the maximum amount allowed by law. Thank you.
For the defense, closing statement,
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
please.
Members of the jury, before I begin, I would just like to thank you for your participation in this trial and the time that you sacrificed for us today. Ruinous condition. Wrong conclusion. Today, you heard opposing counsel try to blame Lush fertilizer for Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, despite the lack of scientifically sound evidence. Ms. Weirs has a ruinous condition, but her lawyers and witnesses have come to the wrong conclusion. Good afternoon, members of the jury. My name is Rachel Kidder, and for the next few minutes, I will show you through the evidence that the plaintiff has failed to meet their burden to prove to you that Lush fertilizer is liable. Plaintiff's counsel hopes you use sympathy for Ms. Weirs or prejudice against Lush fertilizer when coming to your verdict. But we believe when you apply the science and the law, your verdict must be for the defendant. Let's take a look at the jury instructions. Instruction number 2 states that in order for you to find for Ms. Weirs, you must find Lush fertilizer created an unreasonable risk of harm that damaged her, meaning you must find Lush fertilizer caused her cancer. Blake Doncourt, Dr. Devin Williams, and even Carson Durst all testified that Lush appropriately studied Drufo according to the law, and the EPA approved it. What jury instruction number 2 does not state is that Lush had to completely eliminate all risk. It states they had to eliminate unreasonable risk, and that is what they did. Now, there was a study showing that if you give rats enough of a chemical, cancer might be a result. Would it have been reasonable under the law for Lush to completely abandon a product that keeps dangerous nitrates out of our drinking system? A product that protects the health of humans? Probably no agricultural product is guaranteed to be safe. What the law requires is that Lush act reasonably. They did, and nothing you heard in this trial today could prove scientifically, as the plaintiff is required to, that Lush fertilizer caused Ms. Weir's cancer. The plaintiff called 3 witnesses. Certainly, Ms. Weir's was not qualified to and did not testify definitively as to what caused her condition. Carson Durst was a disgruntled ex-employee of Lush who only brought allegations about Drufo after being fired from Lush Fertilizer, after violating a contract with Lush Fertilizer, and after working for Lush's biggest competitor. And finally, their only expert, Dr. Rogers, an entomologist, never even looked into the numerous other chemicals Ms. Weir's used on a daily basis. This failure makes his conclusion one-sided and without any scientific validity. Jury instruction number 3 states that a manufacturer must warn its users of risk of harm. This is where we must talk about the difficult part of this trial, members of the jury. Lush did warn its users to wear protective clothing and to wear a respirator or an N95 mask. Ms. Weir's was told by her boss to do both of these things. She did neither. It is clear no matter what warnings Lush would have given, she would not have followed them. Under jury instruction number 8, she failed to be reasonably careful, as the law required her to be. Opposing counsel just told you that we have to prove certain elements of a jury instruction, members of the jury, but we hold no burden of proof. The only burden today is held by the plaintiff. There are 2 other instructions this court will give you that we believe make the critical difference in this case. And the very first is that burden of proof. It states that if the evidence weighs so evenly on either side that you can find no preponderance, your verdict must be for the defendant. Second, jury instruction number 13 states that you may not use sympathy for Ms. Weir's, no matter how heartbreaking this condition is, nor prejudice against Lush Fertilizer when coming to your verdict. Here, the evidence is that we just don't know what caused her condition. Therefore, the plaintiff has failed to meet their burden, and your verdict must be for the defendant. Profit over people. That is what opposing counsel tried to tell you today, members of the jury. But if Lush truly wanted to put the profit over the people, then they wouldn't have used Drufo in the first place, because Drufo ensures that there will be no harmful chemicals in our drinking system. It protects our health, members of the jury. Yes, Ms. Weir's has a ruinous condition, but this lawsuit is the wrong conclusion. Plaintiff's counsel hopes to scare you into holding Lush Fertilizer liable for causing cancer. But members of the jury, we ask that you study the science, apply the law as the judge gives it to you, and to what the legal system in this country was designed to do. Give equal justice to both sides under the law. We ask that you find in favor of Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Any rebuttal closing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed when ready.
Thank you. Just now, you heard opposing counsel testify about a ruinous condition and the wrong conclusion. They are correct. Dakota Weir's is suffering from a ruinous condition. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma has taken away her quality of life and her future. But it was not Dakota who came to the wrong conclusion about Drufo, but rather Lush Fertilizer themselves. Lush concluded that it was acceptable to put a dangerous product on the market and failed to include adequate warning labels. They came to this wrong conclusion because they needed to profit, even if that meant putting profits over people. Lush is the negligent party in this case, and my co-counsel and I urge you, members of the jury, to come to the right conclusion and to deliver a verdict in favor of Ms. Dakota Weir's. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the trial. Great job, everyone. That was really enjoyable to watch. The instructions that they gave us prior to this round was that we were to let you go as soon as you're done without making any comments so that everyone can get ready for the awards and things like that. But thank you so much. A big thank you to George, our volunteer, who has been manning this courtroom the entire tournament and has done a really great job for us. Thanks to all the teams and to the other judges. This has been just a really great experience. So good job.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, and great
Thank
job
you,
to
Your Honor.
Great job.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your
Okay,
Honor.
guys,
Thank
good
you,
luck.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.